go. And then we're just gonna do popcorn because sometimes it just gets awkward and no one wants to go next. So okay, I'll just start. Great. Taji, Chestnut, he, him, PCCEP, Youth Subcommittee, and Raising Justice. If I was a breed of dog, I'd want to be one of those like Great Danes, probably. They're just so cool, and like they always, get pitted as very mean dogs. But I feel like they're so nice. Most of the ones I've met, at least. Barbara, would you like to go?
Okay. Barbara Boshinsky, Portland Copwatch, she, her. I think I would be a lab because they seem pretty active and happy.
And could you just make sure to say someone else?
Oh, I see what we're doing. Okay, Susan C.
Sorry, it was a little mute challenge. This is Susan Cotter. I'm just an interested party and no affiliation, and a breed of dog. Brittany Spaniel. We used to have a Brittany Spaniel, and I thought she was cool. Oh, I'm supposed to call somebody else. Oh, sorry.
You're good.
Oops. Brian?
Hi there. My name is Brian. My pronouns are he, him. Thank you for having me. I like the big mountain dogs. Bernese mountain dogs. Thank you for having me. Claudia, go ahead.
I would be a golden retriever because that's my favorite dog. I grew up with golden retrievers. Golden retrievers. So, yeah, sorry, I haven't seen one in a while, but yeah, so that's what I would be. I will go with Theo.
Oh, sorry, my power went out. So I got disconnected from the internet and everything went dark for a little bit. So I'm just back. I didn't hear the question.
Yeah, it's if you were a breed of dog, what dog breed would you be and why? I know you have a dog, so maybe you're gonna choose yours.
Excellent question. Yes, I will choose mine, but it's because me and Ocean Dog, we have some similarities. I was a rescue swimmer for a number of years, and Newfoundland dogs were bred for water rescue. So we have that similarity, and we're both kind of clumsy and funny looking. So, and we're picking the next one, or is everybody? Am I the last?
No, Barbara's gone, Claudia's gone, Brian's gone, Susan's gone, and that's it. And I've gone.
I can go. This is Marcia. I'm leaving my camera off because my internet is pretty unstable as well right now. I use she, her pronouns, and the dog that I would choose is a Doberman with the pinched ears.
Oh.
I know. Actually, sorry, I didn't see who else didn't go. Has Jared gone? Jared.
I have not gone. Hi, my name is Jared Hager. He, him. I'm with the United States Department of Justice. I'm here in my role as the monitor of the settlement agreement. And if I can't pick a cat, I guess I'll have to pick a dog. And I would say a pug. And I would say that because of the movie Men in Black. Thanks. I'm a cat person. I'll choose Barb Rainish.
That was predictable. Hey, Jared. You guys can hear me, right? You're not going to see me right now. My name is Barb Rainish, and I am a member of the community. She, her pronouns, and I grew up with retrievers too. but I like big dogs. So a golden retriever mixed with either a Rottweiler or a Newfoundland. And I'm picking Elizabeth, did you go?
Oh, I've not gone. I am Elizabeth O'Connor, she, her. I'm just a member of the public. I'm just here to listen. And I don't know too much about dogs. I think I'd probably be just a mutt of some kind. I think, Britton, I don't think, have you gone?
I have not, thanks. I'm Britt, he, him pronouns, member of the committee. And I think in theory, I'd like to have a large dog. Like, I think a Great Dane sounds really exotic, but I don't think I'd want to be one. It seems very injury prone. It's sort of like being a giant in real life. I don't know if it's very practical. So I'd probably just go with like a Chihuahua, something kind of small. I think my last. I think everyone's gone.
I think you were last, and I
You wanted to be that way.
I rebuke such tall dog hate.
Unless you're living in a mansion, I don't know where you spend all your time as a
I am.
kid.
Maybe I am.
Okay.
Anyway, with the youth subcommittee, I'm sorry, it's gonna be that way. Dog discourse is essential. I guess we sort of can just jump right into it. In regards to opening remarks, just for some of the new folks here, this is the youth subcommittee. So we are one of the subcommittees of the Greater Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing. I am on the subcommittee along with Britt, and there's another member, Yolanda, who's also on it, and she was unable to make it today. We meet every month on usually the first Monday of the month, except this first Monday was Labor Day, so we're meeting on Tuesday. We primarily focus on things related to and on the topic of youth. Most recently, we passed a recommendation on restorative justice, and we have now been discussing not only the implementation processes for that recommendation, but also future engagement we can do with young people, specifically those who've been working around the protests and what they want to see for the future of young people, specifically related to policing and law enforcement and all those fun topics. So we're going to start out talking a little bit about the restorative justice recommendation. If anyone is interested in reading it, it's in its entirety. It's available on the PCCEP's website under recommendations. I don't know exactly where, but it's definitely just called the restorative justice recommendation. And there's not many of those, or there's no other ones, so you'll find it. Any other opening pieces you want to mention, Britt?
Oh, well, no, I was just going to suggest what we should talk about in regards to that. I don't have any other grounding thoughts or whatever.
Cool.
You want to go or you want me to go?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I just thought it might be good if we shared some updates. So first of all, it sounds like maybe there isn't an update from you, Theo, about a response from the mayor's office. I mean, if there was anything or care anything about that process in your correspondence to them, I guess that would still be helpful either way. So doing that, and then we, in our capacity with our nonprofit and just as PCCEP members, have also been pushing this forward in some other ways and thinking through this about what it could look like, especially, well, we'll get to it in a second, but yeah, some other work we're doing. So I think maybe if we talk about those two things, Todd, is that a good place to start?
Yeah, I mean, the main focus of this first point on the agenda is the updates on the recommendation. So I wanted to start by that we sent a commemoration, or Britt, did you get to sending the correct copy of the recommendation to Theo on Friday?
I think so.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I think we're planning to or need to get to sending a copy of the recommendation with sort of some next steps post meeting with the mayor back in July. And so we will, we'll hear back hopefully from them about what that's going to look like. And so that's basically just like the mayor recognizing that he met with us and that he wants to take some of the steps that we outlined in our recommendation to policy and to some pieces that he can implement in his office. In regards to next steps is that I think Britt mentioned lightly around how it's sort of morphed beyond the responsibility, I would say, as PCEP members. And so, we sort of have morphed it into a whole nother ball game arena, and a lot of new conversations happening with restorative justice leaders and practitioners across the state that we've been conversating with, talking about it in the context of Multnomah County and where we can move from here. We also, other stuff that happened in regards to the recommendation, we had a lipstick meeting in August where we talked about the recommendation and talked about sort of where we want to see it going. And that really was specifically related to section 3 of the recommendation, which is around sort of a call to action of creating less siloed efforts around restorative justice, and also using restorative justice as a model for how we should be holding young people accountable. That was really an awesome opportunity to have conversations with some really high level individuals who can make some of those decisions, or hopefully just take some of those sentiments to heart as they move forward in their respective bureaus and bodies. Yeah, I guess that's sort of those are the biggest pieces of recommendation where it is. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts or inquiries around that, the recommendation? More to come on that, but definitely still just in the works, as policy isn't the fastest moving piece. Oh yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
I just remember Judith Mowry being concerned that if it wasn't done right and the police department wasn't really ready, that it could do more harm if they weren't sincere about their apologies and didn't have. So is that being addressed by these people you're talking to?
I'm not exactly familiar to what you're referencing with. I think I do remember someone mentioning the intentionality of it, and I think that because it's a policy recommendation, it doesn't have any strong changes that are made, and everything's done with a lot of pragmatism to it. And so nothing's been moved forward with the policies or trainings or anything related to police as of now, and it's really just a lot of conversations going. But we are trying to be very intentional, pragmatic, and community lens focused, so we don't make any large mistakes.
Yeah.
But if you have any more thoughts and questions about it.
I had some notes from the meeting. I don't know where they are right now, but that she said that y'all, PCEP as a whole, or somebody in PCEP needed to start it would be good to have conversations with the police about what was telling the truth, and some preliminary. But maybe what was their former training on restorative justice? What training have PBB had on restorative justice? No, it was Judith Mowry saying it, and she says in her work with restorative justice and mediation that involved victim and perpetrator, I guess you'd say, unless there was some real clear willingness to change, that sometimes the victim was re-traumatized. And so she wanted to avoid that. But I suppose if you're talking with people all over the state and all that, you're probably gonna figure that out. Yeah, there's a whole, like I said, it's sort of morphed into something that doesn't really fit into what the recommendation is now, in the sense of where it's going. And so I can check, we can connect another time, and I can tell you what we're doing right now with it and get your thoughts on it. I would love to just. Would it be reflected in the recommendation, or is it? No, that's what I was saying. So the recommendation as it stands, the mayor's adopting the sort of next steps of it, which are continue to talk about it, which is, it's not very substantive. So because that, we're working outside of this sort of limited space where we can only create recommendations, and we're trying to move it forward as an organization outside of that, if that makes sense. Yeah. And can connect with you more if you're interested in learning about where it's going. Any other thoughts or questions or concerns about the recommendation? I think that Theo posted it in the chat if you're interested in reading about it, but as I said, sort of tentative, or a lot of moving pieces, I would say. Not tentative, but yeah, a lot of moving pieces there. Okay, great. So we'll maybe just go into the next portion here. So I believe it was back in July, correct me if I'm wrong,
But we had Brian, who's on the call today, introduced or sort of suggested a recommendation on identification, specifically for when officers are doing crowd control and sort of mandating not only the sort of apparel of an identification that's easily legible, but also sort of the policy directive that enforces the need to identify yourself if asked by a community member. And as a subcommittee, we did a work session last week or so and looked into the entirety of this topic of identification as it relates a lot to not only, you know, how do young people know their rights in regards to interacting with police, but also how do just anyone who's protesting, who's, you know, getting pulled over, anything, the police, what are the rules and mandates around that? So what we found is a 2015 or a 5-year-old policy that was last updated in 2015 at the city's level, PPP. It's policy 3.125. That's a lie. That's one of those. It's a policy. I can get the exact number for you. Brian probably also knows it. PPP.
I wish I could say I could. I don't know the number, Tashi.
Oh, you're good. I should know it. Well, I shouldn't know off the top of my head, but it's something that is written on a document. No one writes on paper anymore.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. I assume you are too, but yeah.
Yeah, my computer is slower than.
Right.
I don't know where I wrote things. Stand by. I'm sorry. Wait. I think it might be relevant for folks to know where it's coming from. Are you gonna beat me, Britt?
Well, it's not showing up for me, so not yet, no.
Do you want to talk about other stuff that we were finding on the state level while I look for it real quick?
It's probably best if I pull up the notes for it, so yeah.
Okay. Brian, do you want to just maybe while we wait, because it's going to take a second to find it, but while we look for it, where it first came from for you to want to address this, where you've gone since we last spoke with it, or if anywhere, it's fine if nowhere, because it's not like you were like asked to go anywhere with it, sort of on your own accord. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I guess kind of the idea came from, you know, calls I'm hearing for better accountability from police officers, especially the Black and brown communities. And this just seemed like a really common sense, easy first step that could be taken. And so I guess since I talked to you, I gave testimony at a city council meeting a little while back. And Mayor Wheeler, he just responded that he said, I think we can all agree that we need to work on the identification, and then he just kind of moved on.
Sure.
So that is really the only update that I have. Also, Sarah,
was that at the testimony when you testified?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And Jared graciously put it in the or he sent it to me, so thank you, Jared, shout out. It's directive 0312.50. However, as PCCEP, we go above and beyond. So we also looked at the state level and found the legislative concept that was introduced during the first session around identification that was not moved forward, meaning that it died in committee. It was requiring identification for officers. And then there was also a 2016 bill that died in committee about allowing officers to withhold information for the means of protecting them and their families. So the topic's been discussed for a while, at least. As I mentioned, the directive 312.50 was last updated, at least according to that record, in 2015. And it outlines a few things. One, that officers should provide their identification when asked by a community member, unless pursuant to the subtopic of them feeling unsafe or an appropriate space to ask of an officer to provide their identification, they don't have to provide it.
And that's how vague it is. It doesn't give any examples or anything more specific than that, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So.
And there was also some news articles we found, and there was, we were trying to see if there's even federal rules on it. There's no necessarily federal mandate that officers have to do it. All that to say, we don't want to get too much into the weeds with y'all, but we wanted to share, we're still working on the recommendation, and we're going to have it prepared for the, September general body meeting, a recommendation on this topic specifically, really asking the questions. We've sort of outlined a few questions we're going to be going for is how much effect does identification have on holding officers accountable? And so we're going to speak with folks like IPR director, Ross
Caldwell.
Whatever. And we also are going to ask the question, what is the fiscal impact of requiring officer identification? That was something talked about at the state level. And then the third question is, why has this directive not been updated since 2015, at least for the community, from what the public can find? They could have updated it or not, but because then, that was basically, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of it. So once we have more of substance, obviously you'll hear about it when we're going to present it at the steering committee meeting, probably. Wait, the steering committee meeting for September is today, isn't it? Oh yeah, so we'll probably end up presenting at the September meeting, and if there's time for it, I don't know if they already
I mean, I'd say let's try to get it done, working with Brian as quickly as possible, and at that point we'll try to get it on September's agenda. If not, we can do it next month, but let's aim for September.
Anyone questions, thoughts, public comment, please give all your thoughts.
Just one more thing I would say on it is, I guess in my mind, there's value in kind of the psychological effect of an officer, like knowing that their identification is massive and like you can see it from a mile away. I think there might be a psychological effect there that is just like a reminder to them that they are accountable. I hope that it would have that effect.
And one of the best things we've been able to do with our recommendations, at least as we boast, you subcommittee boasts about our recommendations, we very much try to cross-analyze this with other cities proportional to Portland, because I think that it's really important to see, what does Denver, Colorado is a great one that's proportional to Portland. What do they do with their police officers in regards to this topic? There's other, I think Boston also is kind of proportional, I could be wrong though, to Portland. And those insights provide us with a lot of perspective on why we should or should be pushing for this. And I know there's no federal mandate for it, so it's really state to state for us to be looking at, or city, even just city to city to look at. Because they're probably not going to call us another special session on policing, at least at the state legislation level. And so it's either up to the next session or it's up to the cities by city focus, which obviously we're here for the city's purpose, not for the state. And so we're also speaking with Representative Kasha Lawrence Spence, who is on the Joint Committee on Transparent Policing and Use of Force Reform, I'm pretty sure. She was one of the main sponsors for the recommendation. For all of the, not recommendations, legislative concepts, end of the day. If you're interested, the concept that died in session for this first session was Legislative Concept 743 in the first 2020 special session. So we shall give you more updates as they come, in the sense of we'll either present it at the September meeting, you can see it there, or you'll say it in the October meeting. Okay, dates.
Yeah. Also, I assume we're gonna have a work session to work on this. Certainly with Brian and also Yolanda, who again couldn't be here today. But if any of you are interested in coming, please, it'll be a public meeting as well, or at least anyone's welcome. So just, you can drop us a note in the chat, or we can email about it later.
yeah, our emails are all just our first and last names at portlandoregon.gov. So you can email us there, or email Theo and he can connect us. It'll probably be like it won't be posted, our work session. So if you want to be interested, if you're interested, please let us know in the chat or email us in joining or listening into that. That's where we'll actually get into the weeds of it. So for the sake of this I will say generally for the recommendation, what we are going to sort of present as the key point of it is that officers should be required to, there's a contact list. Officers should be required to have identification in all instances, and that, using this idea of privacy is, this space would say erroneous, but maybe, their reasoning may be a little more nuanced. But I think that specifically to the idea that all other public officials are held to these standards of transparency and accessibility to the public. And so if we're not holding officers to that standard, then they're basically admitting to the fact that they know that what they do can be wrong and that people are trying to hold them accountable for it. And so we're going to try to work under that impression to ensure that we get that. We're going to use that language for the recommendation, probably focusing just like how we can sort of emphasize the importance of identification and this idea of being public servants and public officials. So and so we'll give you more updates as we get them. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next agenda item?
Yeah, Tashi, real quick, does that, what you're talking about, identification, also include detectives and all officers, or just uniformed?
So I know for all officers across the country, anyone who's a detective or other special officer have different directives than that of standard member officers. And so I did not look into the detective directives, or I don't know how much they differ from the normal directives. Barbara might even know this more than I would. Okay, maybe not.
Dan's the data geek. I know it's necessary, but I
don't know. Jared, would you know? Use all the resources we have in the room. If you do, you can shoot a note in the chat, Jared. But yeah, just interesting question, Amy. And I think that, however, what I would say is that the majority of the reason people are asking for this is because of the folks who are crowd control officers, which are always the standard. From my understanding, the standard officers do that. Detectives do not do those sorts of roles of like crowd control or, riot gear or anything like that. And those are the ones where we're like, we want to see who you are and why you're, discriminately using force or not using force, right? And in most other situations, like if I got pulled over, in any situation if a person's pulled over, in most instances, you're supposed to, the officer most often would comply. From my understanding, I think that's not where the issue is. It's more of those sort of experiences where it might be hard to give identification, but it's important that it's at least displayed. They don't have to like stop, write it down in something, but if it's displayed, then it's accessible to the people who are there, right?
Well, yeah, that's one thing I had a question about, because I think mainly this is about what's represented or the lack thereof on their vest or whatever, physically what people can see, and that needs to be larger and have their name not be a number or not be too small. But there is also the question of if someone is asking for it and the officer right now doesn't have to respond because of the directive Taji was talking about. I think that some people also see that as a problem, and we might want to address that in our
So there's sort of twofold. It's more of like, there's a fiscal impact in the displaying of the badge, which is, I would argue, the easier way to go about it. Mm-hmm. And then there's the non-fiscal impact of updating the policy or directive to enforce that all members have to disclose their identification, at least their badge number or their name, or both. Because one costs money, one doesn't, but one is more effective and one's not. So anyway, more weed stuff that we'll probably get into in the work session later this month that we can connect anyone to. Going to the next section, which is gonna, oh wow, we are so on time. Look at us. is the youth town hall. So I think one person or many people at our last youth subcommittee talked about this idea of how do we sort of capture young people's perspectives on this. Okay, great, Jared. Thank you. How do you capture the perspectives of young people in regards to the protests? Because I think that's sort of a voice that's not heard. I know they've had some race town halls. I know they've had a lot of town halls and a lot of topics and a lot of press conferences, and not a lot of those have been have provided a platform to young people, or at least to where young people stand in these issues, or where they see these issues, specifically because they have been leading a great amount of these, not all of them, of course, but leading some great marches and protests, and have a different and interesting perspective on, how change should happen for their future, vice versa. Like, what is the perspective of young people in this like larger conversation around police reform? And we're really excited to hopefully provide a platform for that. And so we wanted to be able to do some sort of town hall to capture that information and sort of hopefully craft some recommendations out of that, and or have the mayor, chief, whomever at that space to listen to that perspective. However, I'm wary of more listening. Obviously listening is important. Sorry, I will preface that obviously listening is important. Obviously dialogue is important, but I think a lot of folks, even on PCCEP, are wanting to see some of those things moved forward to action, and that hasn't been a thing, and it's something I've been quite vocal on my stance on. So, I think we should do a town hall. I don't know if we should do a town hall and invite leadership, and then that's their space of listening, or we don't have them come and we, synthesize what the young people say in that space as young people, hopefully doing it very intentionally, and then presenting that as a formal recommendation to the mayor and the chief. Does anyone in the community have thoughts on that? I know there isn't. Oh no, Brian's a young person. I think, Brian, you're like our age, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I'm 19.
Yeah. Anyway, but do you have thoughts, Brian? Like, how do you think this should go about if we were to try to do something like this from your perspective?
I think that's a good idea. Definitely. I know 2 youth-led kind of organizations right now that are leading marches and stuff. Reaching out to their leadership and kind of getting their feedback on what their vision would be. But no, I definitely like the idea.
And are the ones you're talking about? I know of a few that I've worked with. Like, I know Fridays for Freedom. I know PDX Black Youth Movement. I know.
Right.
I don't think Rose City Justice has any young people leading their stuff. But those are the ones I'm thinking of. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, those 2 were the ones I was.
Okay. Well. Cool. I don't know. No, I know something. Okay, cool. Any other thoughts, though, perspectives from folks in the room?
Taji, I just want to add that I think at our last full body meeting, Zena brought up a really good point about the meaning behind what a town hall is, and listening sessions. And I think that I can't remember exactly what her feedback was. Maybe we can go back and look at it. But I do think it's important because from a community perspective, just considering what was shared, and how, kind of what you already alluded to this, but making sure that we have some like tangible like outcomes that we're trying to get towards. I think one of the frustrations with the work that we've been doing is that we haven't really seen leadership engaged. And so, as you have heard me say once, and probably more than once, I think I would caution asking folks to gather for a town hall without the buy-in from folks that actually have the power to make any changes, because I haven't seen any impressive changes thus far. And I think it's really harmful when we continue to ask the community what their thoughts are, without seeing any reaction or acknowledgement or changes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think first and foremost that we want to work under the impression that if it was a town hall, if we're using the title town hall, it connotes that there'll be folks there who have the power to make those changes, and not only just the power, but the mandate and I think because we're young people, I think we should make a very nuanced approach to how we want to do this. And I think we should have those young people, or have those leaders in the room, the government officials, and create a very nuanced method to ensuring some sort of changes or sort of action steps, whether it's some sort of timeline or whether it's some sort of like, candid conversation that isn't like very, PR. We're not going to like try to invite press and make it like a thing that's, publicized that way. It's very intentional, and we sort of have a conversation that.
Taji, I wonder if, if there's an opportunity to kind of review the different town halls that have already taken place where these leadership from the city have been present and community members have asked for a scorecard of effectiveness.
Right.
I really haven't seen anything, honestly, from the city. And so I would maybe.
That's the biggest worry I have, because, go ahead.
What was that?
I was going to say, like, the last town hall, I remember the race relations town hall that was on K2.
Yeah.
The entire focus of that was like protests, and it wasn't about action. It was basically
Right.
saying, like, if we don't stop the protests, we're not going to be able to do it.
And even on that topic, like, they didn't accomplish anything, and they still have accomplished nothing. So
Right.
what I'm saying is, like, stop hosting all these town halls if you're really not interested in doing anything.
Right.
So I wonder what work could be done to hold the city accountable. Like, is there conversations with Nicole that you might have prior to the planning? And so just to go into your intention about just about how you plan it and how you get, I have no doubt that you all could get people and mobilize young people to come and share their thoughts. And I know that young people have lots of really incredible things to share and suggest. But I think that we're at a point where we really need to have accountability on the city's part. And so I would, I'm happy to help, thinking about a strategy behind that, but I would not host something without their commitment that says, even prior to doing something, of saying, like, this is what you're committing to doing.
Right.
Some action items, because I haven't seen anything.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. And I, furthermore, would find it, incredibly frustrating, and also, tedious to try to put together something extravagantly planned or, executed or whatever, and not have some sort of thing to, say for it or show for it, and in the sense of action. So yeah, I agree. And so it might be be able to be paired quite well with the work session we're having already. Just make it like a 2-hour meeting. We go through both of those action items or topics, and we address them as much as we can. I think one of those things is, like, we have I think as a PCCEP, we have already suggested that we need to meet. I was at a special, what do they call it? Executive committee meeting? What was it? I don't know. It was just like a special executive committee meeting. We were just talking about, like, stuff related to potential upcoming things and events. And one of them was to have a meeting with the city leadership as a PCCEP body. And doing so, not with the public, and trying to have a conversation after gathering all of this insight. How can we actually take some of this to action, but also what's holding up on action? Where how, we're discussing a lot of different things, but mainly focus on, like, how do we, create a peaceful city in a way that is through action and not just denouncing violence or whatever, So maybe that conversation will prompt whether or not it's even something we need to address in a town hall format. I just don't know the timeline on that. I'm pretty sure maybe Theo, if you could provide any insight on
that. I think as far as a town hall goes, I think that would be so I sent out an email.
Sorry, it wasn't about having a town hall. It wasn't about having a town hall. I was wondering if you knew if when we're going to have our meeting with the mayor and sort of be able to share that back with the community.
Oh, I haven't heard yet, but I've been in contact with some folks from the mayor's office, so hopefully I'll get an answer later today when I get the answer about quorum for the city council members for the listening session for the police budget.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
So I should receive 2 answers.
Sweet.
Hey Taji, could I just add something on that topic?
Please, yeah.
I wonder also if you could reach out to like African American student unions or Black student unions at high schools. Because I know my high school like had a director, and that they may also want to be a part of a town hall type of thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting conversations. I don't know if you're in PPS, but I think there's a lot of interesting conversations that happening outside of PCCEP, but I know where I could just speak for Raising Justice. We're working on a plan for the SRO supplementing, since there's no SROs in the schools, what we can have besides that. And so would love to tell you more. Too much in the weeds, that would be pointless to talk about this meeting. But yeah, we're trying to have talks about how the school relates to policing. And I think that because there's no SROs anymore, it became a how do we have the community engaged in that? And so if you're interested in learning more about that, we could talk about it offline, but or at another meeting space. But I think what we're trying to do is meet with like the mayor and the chief and figure out why we haven't been able to adopt policies or, shift. Well, obviously budgets, they have to shift in specific. Susan, I'm just gonna finish this and you can go right after that. Is that okay? Yeah, like why have the things that either the communities expressed they want to see changed, or even direct, formal recommendations that the PCCEP has passed, or other, I don't know if the Citizen Review Committee or the TAC, the Training Advisory Council has passed any as well, but if they haven't adopted those, which I haven't heard about any of them, but yeah, like why has that's the focus of that meeting. And then I there's also stuff happening for the city schools. I mean, the school side, sorry. Too much rambling. Go ahead, Susan, I'm sorry.
I think what you're doing is great, but I'm going to sort of add on to what Marcia said, that, I mean, the evidence is just everywhere that the city has no power to change PPP. The IPR said, we're not independent. We can't do an adequate job of reviewing and performance managing of the police force. CRC, they've had 2 people resign within the week because they don't believe their body, they don't believe they're making any change. They can make any change. We have the COCL that is thinking everything's fine, and we all know it's not. I mean, it just evidence one right after, and also any kind of discipline can't be in public. So, I mean, it's just like over and over again, PPP is not willing to change. There's nothing in the system that proves that they're going to change. And so any effort that you put into this until that changes is lovely, but nothing's going to happen. And I don't mean to discourage you, because I think the work that you're doing is amazing, but I think it has to be sort of tempered time-wise with the reality of where we are.
So the one thing I would say in response to that, Susan, thank you so much. And I agree that in most part that it has, that there isn't much. I personally, I won't speak as PCCEP's voice or anything, but I personally think that, yeah, it is, you're not going to say PBB, you need to change. And they're going to be like, I agree, let's do all these great changes. However, the city does have control over the entire police bureau, in the sense that the mayor is the commissioner to it. And so we, are existing to the best of our ability in shifting and pushing the perspective of the community to the mayor and letting him know that we are trying to share with you actionable things to change and do to help, as you said, temper the community, not really temper the community, but temper the unrest, I will say. And that, the movement around protests is directly driven, obviously, on multiple levels of systemic racism, but primarily, if we're talking about policing, we have, this is one of the only conduits to the direct leadership of the police that has a sort of responsibility to listen to his constituents in an election year on actionable changes that could be pushed forward. And if we don't do that, then all of it seems futile.
Well, but you have already, and it's been futile.
I wouldn't particularly say it's futile in the sense that he hasn't necessarily said, I'm not going to take any of this into something I will adopt or something that the city.
So has he adopted anything?
That's what we're trying to meet with him about and figure out the barriers that have led to him not passing anything that we've suggested or pushed for.
Okay, that's a valuable effort. I'm just saying that all the other efforts that have been going on are just, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the issue. Another issue is like P does not have sort of the legal authority to really enforce that he adopts what we say, as they are primarily recommendations. And so we have to really just work under the hope that he has to respond to us in 60 days, but his response does not have to be the adoption of a recommendation, because it's been 3 months since this started and we've passed recommendations of plenty since, and I don't know if he's responded to all of them, but from my knowledge, he hasn't adopted any of them. So yeah, we're trying and making our efforts as best possible, but I definitely agree and have the same sort of cynical outlook on where things are going. More pragmatic, honestly, not cynical. Amy, did you have anything to say, or were you just, or did anyone else here have anything to say?
Well, I think you guys are doing a marvelous job, and I think what Susan said is kind of what's been in my heart for as long as I've been doing advocacy. But the thing I've always realized is we're in a changing time, so we have to keep fighting and doing the right thing and keep mentioning what we need. But I got to tell you guys, I've been studying government for a long time, and September, October, November, and December are really hard times of the year to get people's attention. So I'm just telling you because it's this way every year. So I'm just letting you know, whatever town halls, whatever conversations we want to plan, we want to do it for after the year, after the new year. Just trust me on this. This is not a good time to gather leadership for valuable conversation, because I think they'd be showboating because of the elections. I'd be worried about showboating, trying to look good right before the votes. Just keep that in mind. But you guys are doing a wonderful job. I just think we need to time it for the right time of the year so we can really drive home our messaging. Aren't they doing the police PPA reviews this January? Isn't that on the table for us to review some of the directives or whatever? No?
So they have the PPA contract.
Their contract.
But that's not discussed. Well, I'm pretty sure it's going to be discussed January through June of next year. And discussed by me, like actual negotiations will be occurring, but those are closed door negotiations that I don't know if PCCEP.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, but we could still enter information based on our relationship with the mayor, right? We could still
There
make
could be a new mayor by January is the issue, though.
The what?
There could be a new mayor by January is the issue. So we can't really. That's sort of all up in the air.
Oh.
January 20th, there'll be a new mayor. Before that is still whoever it's still Ted, but it still could be Ted still. So, anyway.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Other thing you mentioned, Amy, is not PPA related, but I think we should, for now, do as we can to get into the door and talk about where things are going, and that is something that, as a body, we have a responsibility to do. And I agree that we should also be analyzing, we're also in the next 2 weeks or so going to be working on adopting the language that we want to send to the city attorneys related to not adjudication. What is the term? I can't think of the term. That
codification.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Marcia. We're also going to probably wrap up, quite frankly, right now. We are going to table the idea of a town hall until post-conversation with the mayor, which hopefully will be happening sooner than before, hopefully before our September general body meeting, because then we can tell you all in that form, plus maybe an email blast around what happened. So, yeah. Any other parting thoughts? Does anyone else want to be added to a Google Calendar invite for the work session that we'll be having later this month, talking about, okay, cool. Talking about the recommendation on notification and potentially just talking about, I guess, like how do we hold future town halls and forums and talk about that in a better way that's effective. So, yeah.
Taji, should I put my email in the chat?
That's actually a really good idea. Barbara, can you also put your email in the chat? And Claudia, could you capture that in the notes you take? If that's okay. I don't know if there isn't no. If you aren't taking notes, then it's fine as well. Okay. Cool. Thank you. And Barbara, you probably have Barbara's email already. Okay, cool. So I guess at this point we'll call it for today. Thank you so much, everyone who gave their insights. Oh, bye, Raquel.
Question?
Yes.
Can I ask just a really quick question? This is Susan. I was curious. There's an OPB article on unequal access to juvenile justice in Oregon, and I was curious if you had read it and if they matched your youth experience.
Oh, this is like today, so I have not got a chance to read it. I pulled it up now and can send you my thoughts. It looks quite extensive.
It is.
Juvenile justice is something that I'm personally passionate about, so I will definitely take a look at it, and then I'm just gonna actually now copy your email down. And wait, actually, no, that's not your email. Can you put your email and I give you my thoughts, or do you?
Sure. Yeah, I just am interested because it so applies to your group. So.
Yeah. Claudia, if I put in the chat, can you throw it as one of the links we talked about in the meeting? Cool. So that other folks like Claudia can take a look, or like Yolanda can take a look. Okay, cool. And I guess by that, we'll call this meeting adjourned. I don't have a gavel, but if I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Brian. Brian, you still there?
Yeah.
Do you want to stay on for a second so we can talk about like next steps for the recommendation? I don't know
Yeah,
if that'd be
sure
helpful,
thing.
but we can. Okay, cool.